Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arseholics podcast on Thursday night. Few days before the North London derby. Ready to get into it. I'm here. It's me, Raj. We've got Mize with me. Hello, Mize.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
Good. Looking forward to talking about this. Feels like it's sort of not come out of nowhere, but sort of come out of nowhere. I don't know what a better way to put it, but I'm hoping this conversation will just get me, feeling and ramped up for the game.
I've been buzzing for it for.
You're going, aren't you?
I'm going. And Fulham have just scored 2-1.
Was it 2-1?
Fulham, yeah. And I think maybe a result of that, and like from the Newcastle game, just been really, really looking forward to it. I've been I'm going with my cousin Jonathan, and we've been making plans for Sunday, deciding where we're going to go before and stuff, and trying to work out how we're going to not die basically. So getting up to Tottenham. So really looking forward to it. But
yeah. I mean, it's the whole looking trying to make sure you don't die sort of thing. That is important, man. So just take care of yourself, figure out make some smart decisions as to where you hang out. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because last year when you and I went to the North London derby, when we went away, I think we kind of had an okay experience in terms of we managed to avoid any aggro per se. When we met outside the stadium, I guess we kind of very quickly kind of made our way into the stadium when we were drinking in the concourse. But after the game, we did stay to the end. Although I think many people would advise that you don't. There's so much stuff on social media from people saying "Oh yeah, don't stay to the end of the game." But we actually did, and that kind of proved to not bite us in the ass, and it seemed to be okay, right? Like when we left the game, we sort of managed to make our way out. But you see, I remember seeing a lot of footage from people from taking from their phones after the game, and there did seem to be some aggro. So, yeah, man, stay safe. Because there was another time that you went to the North London derby. I think was it a cup game where you said it was a bit more leery?
The old ground. So there's been two. I mean, I've not been that often. I've probably only been 4 or 5 times in total. There's been 2 games at White Hart Lane, original White Hart Lane. Basically been after the game. Going in is normally not too much of an issue because unless you're wearing colours or you want to make it obvious you're an Arsenal fan, you kind of just you keep your head down and you get in. But those 2 games, they were both night games, and one was I don't know if you remember. It was it was a bit of a classic game. It was I think it was one where it was like a 2-2 or 3-3, and Van der Vaart scored. Anyway, yeah, and that one you kind of, if you imagine how Highbury used to be, where everything's pretty kind of congested and narrow, and obviously you're backing on the stadium backs onto houses, so you come out the ground. Imagine just a typical road. So you come out onto the pavement, and you just have a police kind of barrier down the middle of the road. So you're coming out of the stadium, you've got a road's width police barrier, and then Spurs fans on the other side. So they're directing the Spurs fans one way and then the away fans out the other way. But the barrier is, I mean, it might as well not be there because the police aren't really gonna. They're not doing a huge amount. They're literally just standing there, and you just see Spurs fans and Arsenal fans, to be fair, go giving it back, but punches being thrown through the police and stuff. So that was a bit, that was I think that was my first experience. Then there was another time me and Aaron and it wasn't anything too bad, but we got held back. It was the Flamini one where Flamini scored a couple of goals and we won. We got held back for ages. We got held back in the stadium, then we got held back outside the ground before you kind of go onto the main road. I think it's Seven Sisters Road, and so obviously you're in a massive group of hundreds of Arsenal fans, so we kind of just had to just keep your head down and get in quietly and get out as quickly as possible is my tactic, really.
It's pretty pathetic though, isn't it? When people do this sort of stuff after game, it doesn't matter how big the rivalry is. To not leave it on the pitch as and it's a cliche thing to say, but when you're in the stadium, it's all well and good, giving it, supporting your team and chanting and all that kind of stuff. but it is weird, right? You leave the game sometimes, and whatever the result, there's always pockets of people who are just looking for a scrap in some of these types of games. I remember when we went West Ham away, it was like that as well, if you remember, right? Like that. And it was strange. I remember the most weird one I found was recently. Remember when we had Brighton in the League Cup? Brighton in the League Cup. Remember we were walking from the Emirates to the station. Yeah, and just this random like scuffle, like real targeted kind of scuffle sort of broke out. It's very, very weird. I don't know, maybe we're getting old, but it's just it's a bit weird. I don't really get it. But yeah, man, like stay safe. I mean, last season when we had the North London derby, it was obviously at a point in the season where it was like D-Day, right? Like that everything was coming down to that game pretty much, right? Like and it was the sort of penultimate nail in the coffin that made us kind of drop out of the top 4 race. It's a bit different now, right? It's a bit different. It's a bit earlier on the season. And do you think that'll affect the occasion in any way?
I think I mean, look, there's almost I don't want to say there's less riding on this game because it's obviously a North London derby and they're always massive, regardless of where the teams are in the league. But I feel like last season, I think we had a few fairly big or important injuries. I think we went into the game, not with a fully fit squad or fully fit team. I'm not making excuses, by the way, just trying to remember kind of what the situation was around.
No, we didn't. I mean, you're right. We very important players were not available.
Yeah. And I don't know I think when, like, obviously, like you said, me and you went, and pre-match, I think both of us were pretty optimistic we'd get a result because it was a game that we couldn't afford to lose, basically, right? It wouldn't have been the worst thing if we got a draw, but we just couldn't afford to lose. And I think we came into that game in really good form. We'd lost.
And remember when we were in the concourse, we heard the news that Romero wasn't starting as well.
Oh yeah. And you were really kind of, you especially were very much like, this is a massive plus, massive boost for us. And I think we came out to our seats, and first time in the stadium, first time ever going to that stadium, obviously. And I was really kind of taken aback by, just the crowd, the atmosphere, the noise that stadium generates. And obviously the Spurs fans were really, really, really up for that game. And they did make it a pretty intimidating atmosphere. And whatever happened in the game, happened in the game. But I genuinely feel like the crowd on that day did contribute to what happened on the pitch. Like, I feel like a few of our players really were affected by the atmosphere. And I mean, look, that's probably going to be the same thing on Sunday to a certain extent, in terms of, again, crowd Spurs fans are going to be well up for it. They're going to be making loads of noise, all the rest of it. And that stadium does do a really good job of keeping the noise in. It does really generate a great atmosphere. But I think we come in, I don't know, I feel like we're just in a much more obviously we're doing better than we were last season, just in terms of points and where we are in the league, and obviously Spurs are a fair bit behind us. But even despite that, I just feel like we're coming into the game actually playing very, very good football now, and I think that the difference for me is we're 7, 8 months further on down this Arteta journey, and I just feel like that's 7 or 8 months more that the team, the squad, the tactics, the performances, the passages of play, everything has had to develop, if that makes sense. And I just feel like as a result, we're a much, much better team. So I'm kind of hopeful that we go into this one with more confidence than we did back in May or April or May, whatever it was. But I always caveat it with these games, like, to a certain extent, form does, like, it's a cliche. Form does go out of the window. I know we're going to go do predictions right at the end of this, but I don't know what to expect in terms of a result, because it literally could be anything. I
agree. I think that on one hand, I totally agree with what you said about form going out of the window in derbies. We've seen that let's say we go historically, right? Historically, when Tottenham were genuinely pretty poor, right? Back in the day when they were not really competing for top four at all, and we were a top four side. When it came to the derby, you still never knew. Okay, fine. Invincibles era, Henry era, we used to win all the time. Forget that. But after that era finished, despite how poorly Tottenham were doing, you never knew. Form, like you say, form went out the window, and I think it's carried on that way ever since. You could probably argue that in recent years, when Arsenal are playing at home, Arsenal tend to win, and tend to actually score a lot of goals, and that's whatever. But generally speaking, agree with particularly when we're away, form goes out the window. The thing is, I suppose the one thing I'm hopeful of, as well as acknowledging what you've just said in terms of we're in a better place now than perhaps we were when we played them last time, is that last season, really, when you got to the point where we played them, they knew that if they won, that the momentum would be on their side and they had a good chance of pipping us to top four, and there was hardly any games left. So it was like the final hurdle. And I feel the fans knew it, the players knew it. They had to play. That was, if they played the game of their lives that day, the fans and the players, then they had a good chance of finishing top four. And they did, the fans did, the players did, etc. The only thing that, therefore, in comparison to that, is now we're much further off to the end of the season. Spurs have had a really questionable period where even the games that they've been getting points, the fans, I think, have known that there are frailties there. And recently they've had some questionable results and poor results, and the frailties are showing, and the fans have been getting a bit tetchy against Villa. They were booing. It's not great. The atmosphere isn't great. So as much as I think that when we start the game, the fans are going to be, really, really up for it, I think they're also going to be a little bit, nervy. So if we can get on the front foot, if we can, start playing and start the game as we generally start games, I think we've got an opportunity to make the crowd nervy, and I think that permeates the team. In a way that I'm not sure we had last time. Last time, again, it's just like it's cup final. That's it. That's all that really mattered. So I'm hopeful because of that. Really.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think when you look at, if you listen to Spurs fans at the moment, and you speak to them, like they're not confident in what Conte's doing. I think they're just more hopeful than anything. Like they're more hopeful that they're going to get a win in their next game. And you compare us to them at the moment, forget like where we are in the table. If you just watch, obviously we watch Arsenal every game, and I don't watch Spurs every game, but when you do kind of compare, like I said before, earlier, performances and the way that we approach games, the way that we start games, the fact that most of our players are, especially our attack, well, the entire team, to be honest, but most of our attacking players are in form. There's just like, I don't know, when you talk to Spurs fans, they just feel like, I don't really get the feeling that they actually have much faith in either what Conte's doing or that they're even going to get a result on Sunday, or when they play anyone else. They don't really know what to expect. Spurs are just this really random team at the moment, losing to Villa 2-0 at home and then going to Palace and winning 4-0. Like their results and performances are all over the place, really quite erratic.
Because even that Palace game, the first half, they were terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those where that's why I was kind of mentioning the crowd as well, whereas that might be one of the factors that really does influence the game, because obviously they're going to try and push Spurs, just going to try and push Spurs basically and get behind them. But you're right. It's one of those games where if we do what we've been doing for basically since the start of the season, and we really do come out the blocks and really go for it. And you say this every game to us, but especially in this game, then yeah, like you say, if we have the opportunity to like silence the crowd, if we really if we can kind of almost negate that atmosphere, that could result in us potentially, going there and winning and scoring some goals. So it's going to be really interesting to see. And like, it's again, with the derby, like, everyone's joking about it, but everyone's also not joking about it. The referee, Harry Kane's probably going to score the penalty that they're eventually or likely to get. All of these things are going to play a factor as well. And these are things that you can't you can predict are going to happen, but like it's a bit it is quite unpredictable in the sense it could just literally be one bad tackle affects the whole outcome of the game, and so that's what's going to be really interesting to see if that does happen.
Do you have a concern about that? Because see, recently there's been this really random thing that's happened, right? Where after the Newcastle game, we've been charged by the FA for failing to control our players after, I think, it was the last incident in the game where we appealed for the handball. So, FA have slapped us on the wrist and, said naughty. And it's happened again in 2 games in a row. So we've just, we've gone to Oxford and there was a, handball shout. And you know what? I've seen it. I just watched it now after the handball shout and our reaction.
Yeah.
I really don't think our reaction was over the top. I think the Newcastle one, you can probably argue that we were really elaborate and fair enough, because it was stoppage
Last
time.
minute. Yeah.
There was emotion. There was all this kind of stuff. What happened against Oxford? That for me is just normal. That happens every week. Every week. Yeah. And we got fined again. Or whatever. I don't know if it's fine, but we've got it again. Really worries me, because that says to me that the FA, it's almost like a conscious decision where they've said, no, we're going to nip this in the bud. They're not, and go on. And
I was going to say, but go on, mate. Finish. Sorry.
No. All I was saying is that concerns me, because I feel like, one, will we be very, very concerned about doing that? So will we go into the North London derby and feel like, okay, we can't really appeal, and we have to really watch ourselves, and therefore does that not kind of cause detriment to ourselves? And and regardless, and if we do, do the referees think right now when they're going to the Tottenham game, Arsenal can't say shit to us because we warned them twice, they're going to be worried, and therefore we can even on the pitch we can issue cards, we can do whatever because they've had fair warnings, they can't complain.
I mean, like you say, mate, it's I don't know what word you use to describe it, but yeah, I agree with it. I mean, I agree with the Newcastle one. I'm pretty sure that even what happened against Newcastle happens in the Premier League, fairly often, and you don't see charges being thrown around. The Oxford game, I mean, that happens. I don't know how many times in a game. It was 3 players asking the referee the question. I don't think you could call that surrounding the referee.
Not at all. You even see El Neni go there, and he's holding his hand behind his back because he doesn't want to look threatening, and he's just saying, what happened. That happens all the time.
And I think there was I wasn't watching the Fulham Chelsea game just now, but I went onto Twitter, and then there was a few Arsenal fans that had taken some stills from the game, because I don't know if it was Fulham, one of the teams was appealing for a penalty, a few players around the ref, and then I think it must have been Fulham, because they were like, "Oh, Fulham FC, I hope you're looking forward to your charge tomorrow morning from the FA and stuff." And that I mean, it's a bit of a farce, to be honest, and it is concerning. I'm kind of hoping. I mean, it's funny though, isn't it? Because you go back about a year or two, and I'm pretty sure even on this podcast, we were saying to each other, "Oh, I wish we made a bigger deal of 50-50 decisions, or these, when a player goes down in the box or whatever, or even if it's a foul, and we're just basically trying to get the opposition player, get a yellow card or a second yellow card. We don't put enough pressure on the refs, and we didn't have a manager." We didn't have a manager that did it enough either. And Arteta seems to be doing that, and the players seem to be doing that. But now we're all of a sudden getting penalised for it. So it is a little bit concerning. But I think there's no way that they're going to, if you think about the occasion on Sunday, there's no way that the players are going to be able to hold back. If you think about how amped up they're going to be, how charged. I mean, obviously they're going to, it's kind of like what happened to Rob Holding last season in this game, in this fixture, because he kind of lost his head a little bit, got booked twice, and that obviously had a massive impact on the result. But they're going to have to keep their heads. But at the same time, you've got to appeal decisions. If Saka goes down in the box and the referee just waves play on, you've got to put a bit of pressure on the ref, because that does have an impact on when VAR see that, or when VAR review it or whatever. And it does have an impact if the ref has to go to the monitor and have a look at it. All of these little bits of pressure, they do add up, and everyone does it. It's not like we're worse than anyone else at it. Everyone does it. So I don't know if it's one of those things back in the day. I remember, I say back in the day, but even during the Wenger era, I mean, we used to get a red card every game basically, or whatever. And there were times where it felt like the referees were against us or the FA was against us. And maybe look, when you support that team, your team, you sometimes do feel like you're getting the wrong end of certain decisions, and maybe that's not the case because you're biased. But at the same time, there's been quite a few incidents where Arsenal have been involved where you do question, the refereeing decision. Like, even if you look at the stat about Saka, I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but the number of times Saka's been fouled versus the number of fouls he's given away and how many times he's been booked, it's something ridiculous. Like, I think, I can't remember what the stat is, so I'm going to probably quote it wrong, but it's something like when he's been fouled, the opposition player's only been booked once, but this season he's been booked 4 times, something like that. And it's like, that can't be right. Like, I'm not saying the referees are against us, but it's a little bit concerning that this second charge has come in because, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how Arteta handles it because, there's going to be games later on in the season where this kind of thing's going to happen again, and there's going to be really highly charged moments, and the players are probably going to have to maybe think twice. You think you're looking at someone like Granit Xhaka, like absolutely losing his shit, but he's going to have to maybe just calm down a little bit. But I don't know. How do you do that in a North London derby? You can't.
No, you can't. You can't. So I'm really hoping it doesn't turn into one of those kind of games, but I feel it will. If last season is anything to go by, and generally our derbies they're always emotive, like you say. I do think that our players have grown in maturity, and we're going to have a side that I think is going to be able to cope with the occasion better. I would have loved if Jesus was available. I know that Eddie has been doing really well. Like, since he's come in, he's scored, I think, every game aside from the Newcastle game. Can't fault him in that respect. But Jesus comes with a reputation of being a big game player. He was always picked for big games for City. Having him on the pitch, I think, in this derby would have been phenomenal. I think Zinchenko starts on that basis, to be honest. I think Zinchenko will start because, Arteta will want to put that experience on the pitch. And do you see that? Because, if you compare the sides, mate, like last season, I think we started Tavares, right, at left back. Holding started. Partey didn't play because he was injured during this period, right? I think that's sort of more or less it in terms of the players that were out. I think. Oh no, Cedric played at right back.
Oh yeah, of course he did. Gave away the penalty.
Right back. Yeah. This season it's very different. It's we've got a fully fit squad aside from Gabriel Jesus. How much of a difference do you think that's going to make, mate?
Having a fully fit team, or pretty much fully fit team.
If you compare the sides that played. Yeah.
It's when we were returning for the West Ham game. So when we were previewing that, it could be. I think it was around then. One of the main things that I felt was just really going to be really important for the rest of the season for us in terms of us being successful or not was just continuity. And we know I think there's enough evidence now to see or to prove that when the backup players come in, it's obviously not as good, right? The level drops massively, but there's also just that lack of kind of like chemistry between those players. So I think it's absolutely massive. I think it's going to play a huge part, not just on Sunday, but for the rest of the season. Because, like I said before, right, most of these players are on fire. Like, you think about Martinelli, you think about Saka, you think about Erdegaard. Like the performances they put in since they've come back from the World Cup have been phenomenal. Maybe phenomenal is a bit strong, but they've been really, really good. And I think it must be such a boost to go into this game when you look and you say, right, we've got our first choice back five, like Saliba's in, Gabriel's in, basically the back five. And Thomas Partey, like we keep saying, if Thomas Partey's not in the team, this team is a different team because it's a completely different team. And he's huge. Like he's just absolutely crucial to the way that we play. So it's going to be massive. And I think it's just one of those things, like you sit there in the dressing room as a player and you look around and you see who's going out to battle with you essentially. And it must give you such a kind of moral boost to know that, it's not, no offense to these guys, but it's not Cedric, it's not Tavares, for example, it's not Rob Holding. So, Yeah, and like I said, this kind of whole continuity thing, at some point we're probably going to come unstuck because we're going to get a couple of injury suspensions, whatever, and there's going to be games where we're going to have to rely on some of these squad players, and I think that's where it may tell, because we're coping okay without Jesus for now. We're coping really well without Jesus for now, but you take a couple more players out, and it does start to look a little bit more. We don't look like a top of the table team, on paper, and that's where I think like I say, we might come a little bit unstuck, but the longer that we can just keep players fit, hopefully, and keep this like consistent team, that hopefully should mean that we can still continue to pick up strong results.
And if we think about Tottenham, how Tottenham are going to line up, they've been a bit unfortunate, to be honest, recently. Like, in fairness to Tottenham, in terms of injuries, they've Richarlison hasn't been available. Kulusevski hasn't been available in some of their recent games. I want to say they've had some unavailability in central midfield as well. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at any interviews around the latest injury update, so I don't know who out of those players is coming back. Do you know? Have you read anything about particularly Kulusevski, Richarlison?
I thought they're going to be out, but I don't. Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't know for sure. I'm just having a look to see what.
Because for me, if Kulusevski's out, that's huge.
Yeah.
For me personally, I think that'll be a big loss for him, for them. You could argue that in many ways he's really making that front three tick when he's playing, and when he hasn't been, there's been a marked difference. Also, we know when I think about it, I think about Tottenham when Tottenham have been playing well this season, and I think about them using wide areas really quite well, diagonal balls to wide players, Harry Kane being able to sort of drop into that pocket and play in like people like Son and Kulusevski. I think mentally, it'll be really positive for Arsenal and really negative for Spurs if he's not available. I'm not sure about Richarlison as well, and I question his effectiveness this season. Blatantly, he's going to come and score against us.
He won the penalty against us at the Emirates, didn't he?
Yeah,
he won the penalty, and he's one of those players. Like, you saw what he did in the World Cup. I know that's for Brazil, but he's just one of those players. He obviously has the quality, but I mean, look, to summarize, I agree with you. Like, Kulusevski's really impressed me since he's come to Spurs. It's really annoying because he's just really annoying because he's actually a very, very good player and potentially might be. Have they signed him permanently, or is he still on loan?
I think he's one of those obligation to buys, and I don't think there's any concern with that. I think they're going to pay it.
They're going to get him, yeah. So, a bit of an annoying one, really, because he actually looks like a really
And he was sort of linked with us a little bit before he went to Spurs. There was I think there was a rumor that was floating around about him.
Yeah,
because we discussed him on our podcast. And I think he was linked to us just like on the day that we were recording. And I remember we did a little bit of Googling, and I remember us saying like, oh, like he won like Young Player of the Year in Serie A a couple of years ago. And I remember that conversation that we had.
Yeah.
I don't know if we actually were looking at him or not, but I would personally, if you added him to our squad, I think that would be a good addition. I would take him in our squad for sure.
Definitely. I've just had a quick look on Twitter, and I feel a bit dirty because I'm looking at like Spurs Twitter fan sites or pages. But so apparently Kulusevski and Basuma were both training yesterday. It was yesterday the 10th. No sign of Bentancur or Richarlison. So maybe Kulusevski might be back.
Okay. Okay, not ideal. Bentancur, if he's not available, is great. I think he's been really good this season.
He's been good as well. Yeah.
He looks really good.
Yeah.
So that'll be nice.
I was just going to ask you, mate. Do you think so with how Spurs are going to set up and come into this game? Because obviously, it does feel like it's kind of obvious to say, right? Conte's approaching games pretty pragmatically, right? And he's trying to keep it fairly tight at the back or not concede goals, and relying on them coming good later on in the game. Still hasn't really happened because they've still been conceding goals and going behind a lot. But anyway, my question was going to be, so how do you think Conte sets up? Like, when you think about the first 20 minutes or even the first half, do you think he's going to, given that they're at home and given that it's a North London derby, they're going to come out and try to attack us? Or do you think he might just play it conservative and see get a feel for what Arsenal were, what Arsenal were going to do in that first period of the game.
So I don't think he's going to play conservatively. I think because ultimately his best chance of beating us, in my opinion, is not letting us grow confidence and effectively just kind of let the occasion, if anything, get to us and help them. I think the issue with them playing conservatively and letting us have the ball a little bit is that we'll grow in confidence. We'll knock it around. The crowd aren't going to enjoy watching them not have the ball. So I don't think that'll help them at all. There's an argument to say, right? Paul Merson said, I think I read that, he said that he thinks that if Tottenham try and attack Arsenal, Tottenham will get decimated. He basically said Tottenham, if they try and go toe to toe, they'll get absolutely destroyed. But if they defend, then actually Arsenal might have a bit of a problem, and cited the Newcastle game and said, Arsenal would struggle to break them down, etc. And you'd probably think that, Tottenham on the counter-attack are still probably better than Newcastle, you would say, on the counter-attack overall, if they've got, well, maybe if Kulusevski doesn't play debatable, but still Kane and Son's, that's a phenomenally dangerous too. So, I'm not quite sure I agree with Paul Merson on that one. I think that they won't defend, as in they won't play conservatively and play on the counter. I don't think they'll do that. And I think they will go on the front foot. And to be honest, mate, then I don't think it's as simple as what Merson's saying. I don't think that them going on the front foot means that they'll get decimated by us. I don't think that. I think, going back to the spirit of what you sort of said earlier at the beginning, form goes out the window and, the rules just suddenly don't apply. And I think that it becomes one of those cliche who wants it more type games. And if they don't let us get our rhythm and grow into it, the fans will get behind them, and then we'll struggle. So I think they'll try and play how they did last season, which was a pretty physical, pretty direct game. I think they'll try and get balls into channels, try and get balls into the box. The advantage that we have, the massive advantage that we have, is last season we tried to play our normal tactics with Rob Holding and Cedric in the team. So if we play a high line now, Saliba doesn't have to worry about getting beaten for pace. I mean, that being said, I have a little bit of concern about Saliba. Not, and that sounds almost sacrilegious to say that. It's just that he's been on this little bit of form at the moment where he's got something in him. It feels. What do you think about how they'll set up, though, mate? Do you agree with me, or do you think differently?
No, I think I can't see them. I just can't. I don't think you can, if you're the home team in a North London derby or any big game like this, when they have got good attacking players, like you said, and I just can't see them. I can't see them sort of sitting back basically and playing conservatively. I'd be very surprised if they have that approach. I think it's more a case of, if Arsenal can really take the game to Spurs and control possession, it might almost force them into a bit of a kind of defensive setup, as it were. And it's interesting as well to see, because both teams arguably could play on the counter. Both teams have got it in them to play on the counter. You can see Arsenal being devastating on the counter. You can see Spurs being quite devastating on the counter. But like you say, we've got a lot more at the back to be able to deal with that this season compared to the fixture last year. So I can see it being a bit of a classic in terms of both teams really going for it. Yeah, both teams really going for it and trying to win the game. But it's also, when you put the narrative or the context around where we are in the season, I'd say Arsenal definitely don't need it to be that sort of game where it's it's either we win it or we lose it, as opposed to just getting a point and moving on. Do you know what I mean? We don't need the win, and it's kind of similar to last season in a way where I think a draw wouldn't be the worst result. It wouldn't be the worst result. So, it's going to be really interesting, man.
And do you think the team picks itself? So, what I was going to say is there's almost 10 positions that right now are set in stone, you would argue. And I was going to say left back is the only one where, there seems to be this kind of rotational question mark where Arteta through this season has said, well, he'll sometimes go Zinchenko, sometimes go Tierney, sometimes go Tomiyasu in that left back slot.
Yeah.
Who do you think plays at left back?
I think he'll go Zinchenko again. I think the tactic that we have, where obviously Zinchenko joins up with the midfield, and I think a lot of good things come from that. And I think Zinchenko is playing really well at the moment as well in that role. So I don't really see any need to drop him. And Tierney started against Oxford, right? He did, didn't it? Yeah. At left back. So, I mean, I think that kind of tells you who's likely to start on Sunday as well. I don't think Tierney did anything kind of overly spectacular that would put a question in Arteta's head. Yeah. And Tierney, look, he's a fantastic player. He's a really good left back, but I think he has a certain way, like his effectiveness is different to Zinchenko's, or what he's effective at. And I think when you've got Eddie Nketiah as your striker, I'd rather be building up play. I'd rather just set up how we've been setting up. There's no need to have Tierney in the team when he's the guy who wants to overlap and get crosses in. When you've got a fairly small striker like Nketiah, and you've got Martinelli, who's just been devastating on that left-hand side anyway. I'd rather Martinelli just keeps doing what he's doing. And I think with Xhaka on that side, with Zinchenko on that side, he kind of has the freedom to almost do whatever he wants. He's got protection behind him. So, yeah, I don't really see any need to change it. So for me, it's like the 11 pretty much, assuming everyone's fit. It picks itself pretty much. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, touching on that Oxford game, right, and how I suppose it relates to this game in some ways. I sort of tweeted that I didn't think that anyone really in that game would give, on the basis of the Oxford game, I don't think anyone gave Arteta a selection headache for this game. Do you agree with that? Or is there anyone that you think could be knocking on the door? Vieira, maybe?
No, not to start. No, definitely not to start. I think, I mean, even Vieira, no one had a particularly good first half, right? So, I mean, obviously, look, yeah, it went well in the second half, and obviously Vieira got his couple of assists, and he seemed to kind of maybe grow into the game a little bit. But yeah, no, I don't think, to be honest, no, I don't think anyone really put in an amazing performance. The only other player that I can think of that had a pretty solid game was Turner. Obviously, he's not going to start. Apart from that, no, not really. I guess with Vieira, it's going to, again, that's a really interesting one, because if we are, let's say 1-0 down, 20 minutes to go, 10 minutes to go, I'm assuming he'll give him a chance and give him some minutes. And then the question is, well, who do you take off? Unless someone's not 100% in terms of fitness or fatigue or whatever. So that's going to be really interesting as well if we're in that situation, because I would like to think, there are one or two players that, even though our squad is thin, there should be and obviously ESR's back now, so there should be a couple of players we can call on. But yeah, no, not really, to be honest, mate. I think, yeah, we know who the 11 main men are, or at least 10, and like you say, probably Zinchenko. So yeah, and I think he'll stick with that.
And what does a win or a loss mean, do you think, in this game? So, Arsenal at the moment, we're still the form team in the league, despite drawing to Newcastle over the last 5 games. Anyway, the last 5 games, we've won 4 and drawn 1. Being at Newcastle. Spurs very patchy, lost 1, drawn, lost 1. It's just the definition of patchy. You don't really know what you're going to get. There's 11 points in between the teams. Spurs have played 1 more game, so it's that there's a gulf there. It's one of those things that if Tottenham win, they close that to 8 points, but they'll still have played a game in hand. Arsenal, on the other hand, if they win, that gap gets extended, and it's then looking a little bit tricky for Tottenham. Tricky for Tottenham in the sense the top 4 race is obviously open, but you feel that every season, right? There's the who's going to finish. Between both sets of fans, there's a who's going to finish higher, Arsenal or Tottenham. Yeah. So just with that battle in mind, you think that if Arsenal win this game, Arsenal have to really, really, really combust, and Tottenham have really, really got to go on one for that gap to be closed, right?
Yeah, I mean, if Arsenal win, what did you say? It'll be 14 points with a game in hand. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's a massive lead. That is a massive lead. I know it's still
massive,
early.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I know. Yeah, it's still early in the season, relatively, but that, yeah, like you say, that a lot would have to happen for them to come back at us. Come back and overtake us. We'd have to be really bad for the rest of the season, or the second half of the season. I can't see that. Famous last words, but I can't see that happening. So yeah, a win. I mean, I think a win would just be huge, man. When you think about what happened at the back end of last season and how it all ended up, and in terms of missing out on top four. And the Spurs game was just a big part of that. And the way we folded, the way we lost the game, it just everything. It was such a bad night that night. It was so bad. And
terrible, yeah.
it was just like awful. It was like one of the worst games I've ever been to be honest. And and I think when you think about our position at the top, and like City play United before we play on Sunday, obviously, or sorry, they play on Saturday, we play on Sunday, so we're going to know what City have done. And if United, funny to say, if United do us a favour, we're potentially talking about that gap becoming 8 points, 6 points if we draw and they lose, or 8 points. I mean, at the most 8 points, which, if you're talking about our weekend involved playing Spurs away and we then end up 8 points clear, I know it's kind of dreamland stuff, but that is a bit of a message. That is a putting down a marker and saying we keep saying it every week. Are Arsenal serious about winning the league? And I think a lot of Arsenal fans are not sure if we can sustain it. Obviously, we're doing fantastic at the moment, but can we sustain it? But I think, if you go to Spurs and win, as many problems as Spurs have got at the moment, that's still a big game to win.
It's big, massive. Yeah.
So I think it's a real marker and a real kind of like telling the rest of the Premier League, telling Man City, like we're serious. So a win would be huge for us. But like I say, man, like a draw, I'd take a draw. Like, it's just one of those games where you just don't know. Like, none of us went into that game last season and thought we were going to come out losing 3-0. I didn't anyway, and I don't think me and you did.
No, we didn't.
No, I didn't. So it's just one of those games. It's very, very hard to call. And I think a draw would just keep us ticking over. It's not a bad result. It wouldn't be a bad point at all. And then you just move on to United.
It's a funny weekend, though, isn't it? As you said, because of the City United game, it's almost a weekend where the result that happens in your game, you have to look in comparison to what happened in the other game. And I know it's a long season and it doesn't always quite work like that. But sometimes I feel like, when it comes to a very emotive weekend, you just need to come out and see how unscathed you are. So therefore, whatever happens in our result, there is that added kind of lens of what happens at the City United game. But you mentioned that you're about United doing us a favour and stuff. I'm a bit worried, like I don't quite know what I want to actually happen in that City game. Like, I know that I don't want City to win. So I absolutely don't want City to win. But I'm a bit concerned about the prospect of United winning, because United win that game, and if United beat us at the Emirates, which isn't outside the realms of possibility at all, they're then 3 points behind us. United are 3 points behind us on having played the same amount of games. Like that's like a very worrying prospect for me. I really don't want that to happen. Okay, again, many things have to happen. For that situation to happen, Arsenal would have to lose to Tottenham, Man United would have to beat Man City, and then Man United would have to come to Arsenal and win. So there's lots of things that have to happen. But it's not a crazy set of permutations, is it?
No, it's not. And like, it's a fair point. I kind of overlooked them because they've just quietly picked up the form a little bit, and obviously winning games that they should be winning. So it's a completely fair point. And look, the scenario you just sort of played out or talked about there, that might not happen this weekend, but it could, or over the next 2 weekends, but it could easily happen at some point later on in the next few weeks, basically, right? Where we drop some points and United pick up wins and they're all of a sudden, right behind us. So it's a fair, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what result I'd want from that City United game, but a draw would probably be a decent result for us, I guess. I mean, do you see United sustaining some sort of title challenge? I'm asking the question, like, we're top of the league. We can start asking these questions now. Like,
you know what? Like, I really hate to say it, but I based on what's happened in the season so far, I do have genuine reservations about whether Man City are as good this season as they were last season. Yeah. And I know we spoke last episode and talked about the fact that, okay, even though they've dropped points, they're still this experienced beast. And, we talked about how many points they tend to accumulate the second half of the season. But I don't know. There's something about them which doesn't look quite as perfect as,
they're not as like infallible. Is that the right word?
Yeah, that's probably the right word, to be honest, mate, because, even the EFL, the League Cup was just their bunny, wasn't it? Like it's the competition that they rest some players in, but the team that they put out is always still better than the teams that they play, and they kind of walk that tournament. It's their tournament, it feels like, and they played a half decent side out against Man City, against Southampton. It wasn't like a really weak side, and Southampton are the worst team in the country, right, in the Premier League right now.
Yeah,
can't win a game. I think they've lost 5 in a row, maybe. In the Premier League, maybe that's right. At least they've lost 4 in a row. Let me check that. No, they've lost 5 in a row. At least I can't see form past 5, so at least 5 in a row. And they've got unbeaten Man City in the cup. That's weird. That's not like what Man City. That wouldn't have happened to Man City last season. So I think based on that, my concern about Man United is partly because I think that is it one of those seasons where actually, maybe Man City aren't as great, and therefore that's an opportunity for us as Arsenal. But then if it becomes a straight shootout between Man United and Arsenal, then I think we're a better side than them. I still think we're a better side than them. But you kind of never know. Injuries start kicking in and whatnot. And Man United get a nice injury-free thing. We've seen what momentum and good feeling can bring. I mean, so far this window they've brought in Weghorst, which isn't a it doesn't light up the world. It's not, people around the world aren't talking about the fact that United have signed Weghorst, but it's kind of a smart signing. It's a kind of signing which gets you, you're 0-0 and you bring him on in the, last 10 minutes and you go,
It's what we needed against Newcastle.
It's what we need against Newcastle. Exactly. It's a pretty smart signing. It's a bloody hell lot smarter than most of their signings. And it's uncharacteristically smart than what we're used to, which is annoying. So it is a little bit of concern. At the same time, I also don't want to get carried away in terms of my worry about United, because their recent form has basically been because they've been playing some pretty crap teams in the league, to be honest, right? They've been fine. No game is easy in the Premier League. You've got to beat what's in front of you, and that's been doing that. But let's not get carried away here, right? I think that the 4 wins that they've had recently have been against teams that are in the bottom 6 anyway. It's not that big a number. We're doing that for fun, right? Like, so, the jury's still out. I'm not going to get too worried. It's the Arsenal fan in me, mate, isn't it? Like, we've just not been used to being a consistently good side for a while. And I think, with this game, the nerves that are kicking in and the pessimists in us, maybe it just takes over a little bit. But, let's go to predictions for it. What's your prediction, mate, for Arsenal? Let's go for your prediction for Arsenal Spurs, and let's go for your prediction for City Man United.
Oh,
I've got actually the away and home teams the other way around in both of those equations, but you know what.
So United, it's at Old Trafford, right?
It's at Old Trafford, yeah.
I hadn't really thought about this game. I can see both games being a draw, like each of them. Yeah, I'm going to go 1-1 in the Manchester derby. And Spurs, I'm going to go for a bit of a classic North London derby. They're all classics, to be honest. They're always good games, but I'm going to go for a classic North London derby 2-2. My real worry, right, mate, is like, I don't know if you've noted this or whatever, but so Harry Kane, obviously, I know he always scores against us, but he's he's like 1 goal off equaling the all-time Spurs top goal scorer record, Jimmy Greaves' record. And so obviously if he scores 2, he beats it. And I think he's 2 off like 200 Premier League goals as well, something like that. So like, mate, I mean, he must be sitting there thinking, I've got to do it in the derby. Yeah, got to do it. Like, he must be. I mean, he's not like he's got much of a trophy cabinet to look at when his career ends. So he's going to have some of these kind of accolades. So that's like a bit of a worry, because the whole, it's all set up for something like that, right? Harry Kane to score 2 goals, Spurs to win, and he becomes Spurs all-time top scorer and gets 200 Premier League goals. So, but yeah, I'm going to go for a draw, man. Like, I think I don't know. I just feel like, as good as we've been this season, there's some games that you go into, North London derby or not, like Spurs away, in the position that we're in, we're not chasing Man City. We've got a lead at the moment. And I think some games you can be kind of content with a point and you move on to the next. And I think I'm looking at it from that perspective, and I'm finding it really hard to split both teams. Like we've been better than them, but we never win. Like in recent times, in recent memory, we haven't had a good record at White Hart Lane or the new stadium. So that concerns me as well. But I really want to say that we're going to go there and win, and we're going to smash them. But my head is telling me a draw, so I'm going to go 2-2.
I'm debating, so I'm just going to go easy. I'm going to go. Look, let me do the game for. Let me do Man United, Man City. I think that's going to be a draw. I think it'll be 2-2. Did you say 2-2 as well, or 1-1?
I said 1-1.
Okay, I think it's going to be 2-2. I think that's going to be a really good game. I think it's going to be 2-2. I think Tottenham are going to win. But here's the thing: there's nothing. The reasons why I think they'll win is very frustrating. Arsenal are a better team than Tottenham now. Right, where we are right now, at this point in the season, Arsenal are a better team than Tottenham. There isn't really a stat that could argue with that. We score more goals, we concede fewer goals, we have way more points. Okay, the basic defense is better, attack is better. We win more games. Simple. But this whole thing that is creeping in with the officials as well, it's bothering me. The fact that the memory, like you say, of being away there and that away record not being great, what happened last season, the Harry Kane narrative, like you've just mentioned, the Conte big game thing as well. Those things I'm a little bit worried about. I can't in my head visualize us winning.
Right.
I can't visualize us winning. And I think that we are the sort of team, in a good way, I think that we're the sort of team that will go for the win. So I think that if it is level, we'll still go for the win. Like how we did against United, I think we'll really, really search for the win. I don't mind that we do that. I quite like that we're that sort of team. But I just think those things I mentioned are really going to bother me. And I really hope we win, man. Because obviously I hope we win as an Arsenal fan, but we are a better team than them.
Yeah.
And we deserve to win. That sounds so cheesy, but it would mean so much to the team, I think, and their mentality for the rest of the season. They would know it's such a good game to compare because you went there fairly recently and you lost. And this would just mean so much, I think. And then you got home to Man United and you're buzzing. You're at the Emirates and you're buzzing. And, like you said, you mentioned how big an impact the Spurs fans were last season, when we were there. And we can attest to the fact that, fans and atmosphere makes a massive difference. We have been part of a journey with Arsenal fans. We've had the privilege of being season holders for a long time. This is probably the best atmosphere it's been. And you can feel that connection you can feel it. And if we can beat Spurs, we'll go at home to United and the crowd's going to be so up for it.
Yeah.
Because imagine 2 games away. Imagine you beat Spurs and you beat Man United in 2 games. That's what it's all about. Those are, arguably they're our 2 biggest rivals. Arguably, yeah.
Historically, sorry,
historically, right? Yeah, exactly. To fans like you and me, they're probably the two that you want to be are those 2, right?
For sure.
So it's just it's set up for glory. It's also set up for total devastation. But let's see. Let's hope the players and the manager aren't as emotional as we are. I want to talk to you about transfers again because I know you said you went on Twitter, but I don't know if you saw, because just before the episode started, Fabrizio tweeted about Mudryk. Did you see that?
I did actually. Sorry, yeah. Just before, I did. I think he's tweeted again 9 minutes ago. 9 minutes ago, yeah. If I could
find
out where to
pull this
on
on the screen, shall we read it out? I will read it out.
Go for it, mate.
Exclusive. Arsenal new official proposal for Mykhailo Mudryk is close to 70 million euros fee plus add-on submitted tonight, as revealed earlier. Negotiations ongoing with Shakhtar Donetsk to discuss on add-ons package. Okay, no issues on personal terms. Mudryk wants to move. That's a big offer, man. 70 million euros plus add-ons.
What was the first bid? Do you know?
No, I don't know, but I got the impression it was like 40, 50, around that range. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. I mean, look.
I mean, like we said
Yeah.
last time, I don't really give a shit. Like
Don't give a
about
shit,
you know,
no.
don't give a shit. Like
The only reason you start
with
to
you,
give a shit is if the player flops, like what happened with Pepe, and then it's like everyone starts like every time he miscontrols a ball, it's like, oh, you paid 70 million for him, and that's just like, oh, for fuck's sake. But otherwise, no, I don't give a shit, to be honest, because he could turn out to be a gem. So
actually, to be honest, mate, like that bit, even okay, obviously that's annoying. Like, you know, I don't want any of our signings or any of our important in inverted commas signings. Chan says 40, so apparently our first bid was 40 million. Thank you, Chan. The only reason I care, if the only element that I care about what we spend on players is if it prevents us doing other things, right? And you still never know that. You never know it for a fact. But you know, if it gets to a point where you're signing someone for, I don't know, like 70 million euros, and if Arteta and co are saying like, okay, you know what, that means that we can't sign the sort of central midfielder that we want or whatever like that. That's the only time where it would.
I know what you mean. I mean, you know what it is, mate? Like, I don't know if we've kind of met now as a club, we've sort of moved past that a little bit, because there's obviously the plan that started a couple of years ago, and we've like every transfer window tried to execute that plan, like in phases or in stages or whatever. And it doesn't feel like it feels like Mudryk is part of that plan. Do you know what I mean? It's like the
really good point. Good point.
And I also feel like we're almost banking on, like, it's going to take, if we don't get Champions League next season, it means that we have fallen off massively in the last 20 or so games of the season, right? So on the assumption that we haven't secured it, but we get Champions League football next season, that's huge in terms of like the finances, right? In terms of the income, revenue, whatever. So
and like you say, that was the plan. The plan was
exactly, yeah. So it's almost like they're probably, you know, it's a shitload of money, but at the same time, I don't know if it necessarily affects, like, for example, if, like, okay, for argument's sake, Declan Rice is the midfielder that we want to sign, and he's 80 million or 70 million. I don't necessarily think that us signing Mudryk now for more than we would plan to affects, you know, again, the next target. Do you know what I mean? So
I agree with you. Yeah. I agree with you. So that's true, right? So you know, again, maybe that is something. Yeah, look, I agree with you. I think that perhaps then, you know, if you weren't so targeted, if we didn't have such a strategic plan, then maybe it's more of a concern, because, you know, you sort of think that, all right, yeah, actually, maybe they were thinking, oh, should we sign a winger and a midfielder? Or maybe we can just sign this winger now because we spent too much money. And I agree with you. Like, you know, we debated so much last January when we were talking about getting a striker in, and we debated whether we should do that. And I think you and I were sort of on the camp of saying, well, look, if they've got a plan, you know, and they know how they want to spend their budget over a series of years, like, you know, is it not better to just stick to the plan and not just kind of whatever? And it's different schools of thought, isn't it? No, look, I'm with you. And man, like, if Arteta and Edu are willing to spend this kind of money on a guy, then I think that, you know, they've probably got real good feels about him. I love the idea that, you know, you've got someone like that potentially coming in January who's young and exciting and rapid. You know, like there were the stats that showed he's the fastest player in the Champions League this season.
Yeah, I saw that.
You know,
crazy.
You know, crazy wheels, man. Like, and that work, Premier League pace, power are massive things in the Premier League. Like, so in that respect, like, you know, guy fits in. You know, it all feels great. You know, great options for us as a side. It would have been really good to have him done before the derby.
Thinking that's where might be a little bit frustrating if we don't get the results we obviously want in the next couple of games. Like, assuming he's not ready if we don't sign him before United as well, or he's not, you know, whatever, he's not in the squad for United. Even if we do sign him, that would be frustrating, right? It's just like one of those things that we always say, like, we want the business done early, summer and January. So that will be a bit annoying because it's such a crunch part of the season with two like massive games, and who knows like what effect he may or may not have had, but you'd want someone like that just in the squad basically as an option.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like, and I think the other thing, just to add to what you were saying about the transfer and stuff, like he obviously wants to come as well, like very, very obviously, right? So yeah, he's completely like on his knees for us. So, you know, it feels like it's going to happen, which is like kind of mental because you don't really normally see this sort of money being thrown around. Definitely not by Arsenal, obviously, but generally in January. Like, I don't think anyone else has really done. I'm trying to think. Has anyone else signed anyone like? I mean, obviously Felix, but even he's alone. Weghorst. I can't really think of any other big
I mean,
signings.
Gakpo went to Liverpool, right?
Okay, yeah, true. Gakpo, yeah. But yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
that's
I think
probably it. So
I think that is it. And I was thinking a really interesting parallel storyline here, right? Is if we sign him, over the next few days or whatever, obviously he won't make it for Tottenham. But if we sign him in the next few days, there's a chance that he makes Man United, right?
yeah.
And when we played Man United, they had just signed Anthony, Anthony scored against us, whatever.
Yeah.
It will be a lovely, fantastic bit of retribution if, Mudryk's first game's against United and he scores in a win. I'd love to see that. That would be
pretty special. I've just seen Stevie's comment. I had no idea Felix got sent off. I didn't realize.
Oh yeah, so I knew that
because we've been recording, so I didn't know.
So when he got sent off before they scored the second
goal.
goal.
Okay. I didn't.
Yeah, so it was still 1-1.
No way. What did he get sent off for? Do you know?
I think it was a straight red. So I didn't see it. Well, I read it on the kind of transfer, not transfer, but one of these final score, whatever it is, one of those apps.
Yeah.
And it seemed to suggest it was like a straight red, like an out of control challenge.
Oh, no way.
But then when I quickly went on Twitter, it sounded like people were saying, yeah, it's harsh.
Really? Did they lose, Chelsea?
I don't know. You said it was 2-1, and I haven't seen the final score.
I haven't checked either. Wow. Okay.
But that is banter. That is like Stevie's put it brilliantly there, right?
Oh yeah, 2-1 finished. Yeah.
Stevie's put it brilliant. Williad scoring.
Yeah, I know.
And Felix getting sent off is just mental. Like that is not. That's mental. Our Chan saying day challenge. I like. Fair enough. That is very interesting. I almost I don't like Chelsea. But one of my best friends is a Chelsea fan, and and he's a good Chelsea fan, to be fair. Like he never gives me crap. And I remember in the Arsenal banter era, I was talking to him yesterday about this, about the days when we were 4-0 up against Newcastle and we drew 4-4, and we were living together at the time. And he used to feel so sorry for me. Like he was just like, man, you don't deserve this. This is like, he genuinely felt so bad for me. I feel like that now. Like I know it hasn't been that long since they've, fine, they've been winning trophies like not that long ago at all. But they properly look banter right now. Like they look like they're just complete team.
Bit of a mess, aren't
squad
they?
of just mess, like mercenaries and like I don't know what their system is. Don't know who plays where. Don't really understand. Have they got a strategy of bringing in young talent or not? I don't know. I don't know. It kind of seems like they are. Then it's like they're signing loads of random players. They get signing lots of attacking players, but they need central midfielders, and it's
striker,
it's crazy. Yeah. It is. Exactly. It is probably crazy. I think Chan's just not impressed with Chan in the comments does not look impressed that I've
what's the reference?
I don't
know, what reference is this? Excuse me, boss.
I took that as he's just saying, excuse me, boss, as in excuse me, what the hell are you doing?
I think it must be from which is me and you are both clueless here. I think there's some sort of a movie or something.
Yeah, no idea, mate. No idea. Sorry, Chan. What Stevie did. Okay, so Stevie's clocking the reference. Anyway, sorry, that this little exchange must be really boring for anyone who listens to us on Spotify or Apple or anything like that. So apologies for that. Okay, look, that'd be great if we can get that deal done. That would be so super awesome. What do you think about us drawing Man City away in the FA Cup?
Not ideal, really, is it? I mean, yeah, not ideal. Not the game that you want. Like if we go out, at least we're going out to the best team in the league, or at the moment the best team in the league, or previously, sorry. I mean, the only kind of annoying thing, not the only, one of the annoying things is that he's going to have to put out a pretty strong team, if not a full strength team. He might rotate one or two, but he's not going to be playing. I can see him playing.
You can't see him playing Rob Holding and Al Neni, can
you? He might play El Neni because El Neni's experienced enough, and Rob Holding. Like he potentially might, but sorry, I've just seen someone putting their car up outside my house on the camera. So yeah, sorry, but I mean, look, he's going to have to go fairly full strength. So that's a bit annoying because it would have just been nice to have had opportunity to rest a few players and have a bit of an easy game. But otherwise, like I think it's just like I'm just looking forward to a decent cup tie. To be honest, if we can go there and win, fantastic. But it won't be any kind of shame if we end up going out. What about you? What do you think?
I agree. I think. Well, I think we really. Obviously, I think it'd be really nice if we win. I kind of want to win the FA Cup this season. To be honest, I know that there's lots of people saying sack it off. We can win the Premier League. Like, yeah, maybe, maybe, but I don't know. Like the FA Cup's always had something nice about it, and I think we're a good team. I think the one thing is like just losing to Man City. There's a bit of that mental thing, with two teams competing for the title this season. Right now, and does that give them a mental edge if they do? I don't know. Like I'm not convinced. There's lots of pros and cons that it's just maybe these things just even each other out, and it is what it is. It concerns me a little bit that Man United are still in full competitions. I think that's just really annoying.
Don't worry, mate. I don't think. I mean, what as in what are you suggesting?
I mean, they could win. Okay, look, they could win the League Cup.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah,
it's not completely outside the realms of possibility at all that they get through Barcelona and then kind of they're joint favourites for us with us. I think for the Europa League.
Yeah.
FA Cup maybe, and as I said, this crazy, this kind of doomsday scenario over the next 2 game weeks could mean that Man United end up very close to Arsenal. I don't know. Listen, I'm letting all these Man United fans on Twitter clearly get in my head because I've just seen some real bullishness on social media from their fans, and maybe
just the Rashford. Did you see? I think you retweeted it. Was it Rashford? Peak Rashford is better than a peak Henry or something like that.
I think something like that.
Current Rashford is better. Crazy.
Yeah. I know. I see some crazy things out there on social media with Man United fans, man. I see some Man United fans talking about how those are like, do you ever find yourself on social media going to it like just a thread of tweets that just engross you in a really kind of like voyeuristic way? So like I kind of like there was this tweet of some guy and he's just like whereas it was basically saying like, not gonna lie, man, like there's no one in the world that can beat us. No one right now, literally no one. And then I thought, a Man United fan,
right.
And I was like, that's really funny. And then someone replies, and this other guy, like he's really, agreeing with his bro here, yeah. And he's just like, no, man, I can't see it. I mean, like definitely not Man City. I don't know. And they're like literally going through all these teams, like other top teams, and why those top teams probably can't beat them. I was like, this is mental. Like you've beaten like a bunch of teams in the bottom 6, and you genuinely think you're the best side in the world.
That's the annoying thing, though, isn't it? Because you go on a run of like however many games they won, 4 games or so, even against teams they should be beating. But now they're on this mass, like Rashford's now in form. They're on this massive high. It's like Ronaldo's gone. Martinez has come back from winning the World Cup. Like they've got like all these kind of positives and like boosts essentially. So like it's like they're not riding the wave, but they're just basically in good form. So now they're set up for these like big games they've got coming, City and Arsenal. Yeah. And then you go into those games in a completely different mentality than you would say 3 or 4 weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? So like that's the annoying thing. I can kind of see like, okay, obviously look, Twitter's just full of all sorts of types of fans. So you take it with a pinch of salt, but I can see why they have confidence. But yeah, they haven't, these games that they've won recently, they've not like been tested by the best teams in the league. So yeah, I think you've got to give it a few more games and see what happens.
No, like on contrast, like 2 fabulously modest men like you and I here going kind of like, we've dropped points in 3 games in the Premier League season, and me and you are still wondering if we'll finish in the top 4. We're like, don't know. Maybe, hopefully we finish in the top 4 type thing. Well, let's wrap up in a second, but Stevie's got what's Stevie saying here before we wrap up? He says, not usually mega confident for top 6 games, but Spurs and United at home is such cash money each year. It's scary. That's fair. Like, I do think that goes under the radar because whenever it's like, when we go and we play, particularly Spurs away, right? Everyone's like, oh, like, such even teams and this, that, and the other. And it's like, which way is this going to go and whatever. no one says that. When Arsenal are at home, Arsenal win pretty much every season against Spurs at home, and in United as well. Like, it's very rare that Arsenal don't beat United at home. I think, I remember one of the last times I remember United beat Arsenal when Arsenal were at home was that game where I think did De Gea break the record for something like saves in a Premier League game or something like that? It was like this outstanding game where Giroud scored in a consolation in a 2-1. We rarely lose at home to United, but I guess stuff like that does sort of matter. And Stevie, yes, you're right. United could get a result at City. So look, it's all happening. So listen, we'll close it there. Mize, really looking forward to seeing the stuff on social media from you. If you do get the chance to post anything from the Tottenham game, I'm very disappointed I can't be there with you, but I know you'll do the boys proud. You'll be singing your heart out as always. You'll stab someone in the throat with a broken bottle. You'll, all those things God. you will do. Enjoy yourself, mate. I really hope
Thanks, man.
We can give you a good performance because, bro, like I was there with you last season. You can't go through that again. That was awful. Like that is just heartbreaking. And Sunday night, do you know what I mean? Like Sunday, you'll be getting home in the evening, like late in the evening, it'll be raining, it'll be cold. You don't want to have lost. But if you win, then it doesn't matter, man. It'll be torrential thunderstorms and you'll be fucking over the moon, won't you?
Yes, mate.
All the best for that.
Thank you, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Everyone, thank you for tuning in to the show. Thank you very much for Chan, Stevie, for being in the comments. Really appreciate your interactions. And hey, if you enjoyed the podcast, guys, if you're listening and you haven't done so already, please subscribe, please like, share, please do those things. We really appreciate it. And look out for Mize on social media on the Tottenham game, bringing you the heart of what Arsenal fans will be experiencing that day. So thank you all. Have a good Derby Day weekend. Mize, pleasure as always, mate.
You too, mate. Thanks a lot. Catch you soon.
Thank you.